It's so hot. I'm going to have to go no pants again for this.
Dude, that's how we play every game of PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds.
That is how we play every game.
You got a chicken dinner with no pants on?
Of course we won with no pants.
This is going to be the most unproductive thing ever.
Hello and welcome to the Game Brew Podcast, episode 010. That's right, we're in double digits this week, people. On August 1st, 2017, I am your host, Ian Richard, and I'm here this week with Dan Rotz.
Hello.
Chris Wrights.
Hey.
Alex Ryder.
What up?
Will Shell.
Hey.
And most importantly, our special guests from the Long Lost Heroes Podcast, Frank Marsilio.
Hey, everybody.
And AJ Sherman.
How y'all doing?
Yeah.
Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for being here.
Welcome.
Oh,
Thanks for
thank
having
you so
us.
much for having us.
Yeah. This week, we'll discuss which superheroes we want to see get their own solo video games, and we'll talk about how intellectual properties cross the void from storytelling into gaming. But first, it's time for a beer.
It's less satisfying. It doesn't make up because of the cork.
I got a nice pop.
Chris, what are we drinking?
All right, so this week we're drinking the Framboise Lambic from Belgium, Germany, from the Lindemans brewery. It's near Brussels.
Ooh, there
So
we go.
it's a...
Which is next to Sprouts.
Yes, exactly. It's right next to Sprouts. Oh, man.
Dad jokes brought to you by...
So this beer is a lot different than anything we've had on the podcast so far. It's...
Red.
It's a very red beer. It's a fruit beer, and a framboise is French for raspberry.
Raspberry.
It's actually fermented with wild yeast instead of the yeast that are normally used. So it's kind of harder to predict how it's going to taste. But
Oh my God.
it creates a
Whoa.
really great flavor. I really like it. I think it's awesome.
Oh my God, that's so
It looks
good.
like straight up wine.
It does, but like it's actually got a really low alcohol percentage. It's only 2 to 4%, I believe.
Wow.
So that means you have to drink a lot of it.
That's why I got a big one.
Got the big
Explain the
bottle.
wild yeast thing again. Is that like
Yeah, so-
free range chicken, like
Yeah,
cage-free eggs?
this is
sort of
like
thing?
yeast that just doesn't wear pants. It's wild.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like when you're playing PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, you got to not wear pants. It's
Right.
when you're making this, you got to use wild yeast.
Wild yeast.
So
okay.
basically, with wild yeast, it's a lot more unpredictable. It's actually coming in with the fruit itself instead of actually being added a lot of the time.
Okay.
So it's naturally fermenting.
This is it's like a dessert wine or like a dessert beer. Excuse me.
Yeah.
You can't. It almost doesn't taste like beer at all.
But it is.
AJ, I saw some lip smacks there. What's your consensus?
All right, gentlemen. First of all, I'm very excited to be on the podcast with all of you today. Frank and I are honored to be here. But I, in my youth, worked as a waiter at a Belgian restaurant for a summer, and I had to learn a ton about Belgian beers. And the Lambic, the Lindemans Framboise, this guy, is a very popular beer in Belgium. And typically how it's drank in Belgium in the summer is you mix this Lindemans Framboise with Hogarden, and you get what's called a Belgian Kiss.
Nice.
Ooh.
That
Sounds
sounds
delicious.
awesome.
So what they do is everyone, like you'll do this like a little bit of maybe a quarter of the way up the glass, and then the rest with Hogarden. Unfortunately, the guy wouldn't sell me a Lucy of Hogarden, and the other place everyone is pretty much out. So I got Red Stripe, and it's a Jamaican Kiss. Everybody's already on.
Nice.
Oh man, I got some Golden Monkey. That might be good with
Ooh.
it.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, I don't
this is
have any
really
of that.
interesting.
That was like real beer information.
Beer formation.
Yeah, Chris doesn't give us any real beer information, so
Fuck.
I have my old menu, and I wanted to just kind of take a look, because they have a whole page dedicated to this stuff, to this Lambic beers right here. All you guys can see. I guess it's not a video podcast all the time. Lindemans
That's right. So all our
Framboise,
listeners can see.
vibrant, rose-colored, juicy, ripe raspberry fruit flavors, explosive sweet flavors, 4% alcohol. Bada bing.
Bada bing.
Boom.
Frank, what do you think?
It's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone else. It's kind of a little bit more in the wine, almost champagne-y family, where it's got that bubbliness with the sweet.
Yeah.
The raspberry isn't too overwhelming, though. But yeah, it doesn't really feel like I'm drinking a beer necessarily, but I'm digging it so far.
But you like it, though.
Yeah.
That's what matters.
Exactly.
So, Frank and AJ, just for our listeners out there, why don't you tell us about the Long Lost Hero podcast and where it came from and what you guys do, because I'm sure everybody wants to know all about it.
Sure. Yeah. So the connection here between the Game Brew and the Long Lost Heroes podcast sort of is me, Frank. We all went to JMU together, and then AJ and I grew up in Comac, Long Island, and we went to high school together. So in high school, we had a rock band called the Long Lost Heroes, and
cool.
There's a couple other members that we'll have on. We actually had one of the members on a couple months ago, which was really cool. But yeah, we decided that revive the name. It's something that people know, or at least our friends from home know about us, and we wanted to keep talking about things that we are always talking about. AJ and I were doing movies, TV, pop culture. We love Star Wars and Marvel and all that sort of stuff. And so most recently...
But those DC fuckers, they can just go to hell.
Well,
Get 'em out.
No, I'm a big DC guy.
It's true.
But yeah, listen. It's so great because Frank and I, we go way back. I remember meeting Frank for the first time in like 4th grade when he played trombone and I played trombone. I was a really bad trombone player. Anyway, but just kind of over time and growing up, and now to be able to kind of catch up every week when sometimes it's hard to make time when you work like we do, and it's cool to take some time to be able to chit chat it up with my best friend on the highest level we could possibly imagine it, which is at the highest stakes possible at every episode.
It sounds very high stakes. Speaking of high stakes, you guys have been talking about Game of Thrones lately. I don't say okay, but no spoilers because
no spoilers.
No spoilers.
I'm just finishing the first books.
Yeah. We actually most recently we've covered some of the movies like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Wonder Woman, even War of the Planet of the Apes, and a little bit of Comic-Con. But yeah, we've been trying to cover each episode of Game of Thrones. It is definitely a feat,
that's awesome.
to do every week. So, but yeah, it's been great. We're looking forward to continuing that for the rest of the season. Like we said, no spoilers, but so far I think we're both enjoying it. So,
what's been your favorite movie of the summer so far?
Oh my God, Frank, go first.
That's hard. I think I think Spider-Man: Homecoming probably is going to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
AJ, go.
I loved Dunkirk. I just saw it this past weekend in the great IMAX over at Lincoln Center. It blew me away. I'm going to probably wrap it up to like a no spoilers thing, but I really, really loved it. Everybody should go see it for the experience factor.
Very cool. Well, if you want to check out Frank and AJ on their home podcast, you can find them at www.longlostheroes.net, or you can find them on Facebook at LLH Podcast, or on Instagram and Twitter at the same. So go look them up. They're awesome.
Oh, they're also on iTunes. They're on iTunes now also.
Yes, please subscribe.
Ooh, so
Subscribe,
fancy.
like, and subscribe.
Okay, so let's move on real quick to what we've been playing this week. It's been a crazy week for all of us. So maybe if everybody can pick one thing that they've been playing with this week that they can't put down and they just want to talk about, I'll go to Dan first. Dan, what have you been playing this week?
I can't stop playing Dead Cells. I can't stop. It's literally
It's good.
It's addicting.
it's so good. It's literally to the point where if I'm not playing Dead Cells, I'm thinking about playing Dead Cells. Like I'll be sitting on the couch watching Arrow season 3, which I'm on. No one spoil anything. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, this is good, but I'd rather be watching Dead Cells.
Myself
Dan,
playing Dead
have you
Cells.
reached the point of immersion in a game where you have vivid dreams about playing
Yes,
the game?
I do. Yes,
Nice.
I do. Constantly.
That's when you
best.
know that you have a problem.
No, that's the best. That's when you know you're getting good.
Whenever I beat the first boss, I was like, yes, I did it. And then I was like, oh, wait, I have to do that every time.
Sure do.
Roguelites. AJ, what have you been up to?
I love this game. I play it with my fiance, this Lovers in a Dangerous Spacetime.
So good.
Dude, it's cool. I really like the cooperative thing of it. Playing it as a party game is always awesome. We've been digging that. I've also been playing the Xbox 360 reissue of Lego Star Wars.
Nice.
Nice.
That's just brain gum. I love it. That's it. Frank?
I've been playing Splatoon 2. I've got the Nintendo Switch, so I've been primarily been playing that for the past couple of weeks. I played the original on Wii U, so there are some really neat updates and upgrades from the last game. I've really been digging into the single-player campaign, but I've been digging the mode called Salmon Run, which is basically a horde mode. Yeah. It's a lot of fun and very addicting, and every time it ends, I'm like, oh yeah, I'll play another one. Oh, it's midnight? I should probably go to bed.
So Frank, you and I need to do Salmon Run together because I have Splatoon 2. I'm the other Switch person here, and I love my Switch, but I cannot make myself like Splatoon 2. Every time I boot it up, I'm like, I'm gonna have fun this time. It's gonna be great. And then those two fucking little squid people pop up at the beginning of the thing, and I have to listen to them natter at each other for like 5 minutes before I can do anything, and it makes me angry.
Yeah, it definitely is frustrating a little bit if you just kind of want to get through to the game already. And the other thing that ends up being really frustrating for me is I feel like I lose a lot because I get paired up with people that suck.
Then you don't want to play with me.
No, I think, and a lot of time, I think earlier on the matchmaking wasn't great, and they weren't. Okay. I would lose a player, so we'd be 3 versus 4, and that's just no fun. So, but I'm enjoying it so far. Yeah, we should definitely play.
What's
cool?
Is it a fish-based game?
Splatoon is all based on sea creature type things. So all the characters are, they call them squid kids, I think.
Squids, yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Inklings.
This sounds very Nintendo.
Yeah, it's very Nintendo, which is cool. It's nice to have a first-person shooter that's not focused on blood and guts and gore and
I don't know about that.
Murdering people. It's nice to have something that's a little bit more like, hey, spray each other with paint, but I don't know. There's something about it.
Well, when I get my Switch and I join you guys, dibs on halibut.
Roger that. Just for the halibut, we're going to go to Will. What have you been playing?
So I was going to play some more Ocarina of Time while I traveled the past week, but I forgot to pack.
Air
quotes.
I did. I really forgot it. But in any case, I played some mobile games this week, specifically a game I've had on my phone for months but haven't touched for some reason. I don't even remember why I downloaded it, but it's called Reins, like the reign of a king. And shortly, it's a fast-paced decision-oriented game. You swipe left or right, essentially for yes/no, although what you're constantly presented with are not always yes or no questions.
Yeah, so it's like essentially it gives you a card.
Yes.
And then you have two options. One option is on the left, one option is on the right, and you have to choose between one of those binary options. Yeah,
and you're the king, and you have each card is a person or an entity coming to you to ask you for shit. Give me money for this. Send the troops to do this. But occasionally, and I haven't figured out quite how I'm unlocking these or if they're just random events, but you get some really cool, unique events, like a witch will show up, or some weird thing like your shoes start talking, just weird stuff, and you have to start interacting with that, and then it goes down usually this very dark pathway of sadness, and it's really interesting. It's not at all my type of game, but I find myself really getting into that.
Yeah, I played that while I was traveling too, and it's really cool. You get to make a bunch of civic decisions, and there's a mushroom trip, which is always fun. And
it's cheap. It's worth a couple of bucks, and it's a good crapper game.
Alex, fill us in.
Yeah, so the game that I played this week is actually based on a review that we got from someone on the iTunes store. So thank you all so much for leaving us reviews. It's awesome. And thank you so much for your feedback. But this specific person, their username is the movie, and their review asked us if we could do an episode of MOBAs. A couple of us talked and figured we would try out a new MOBA that none of us had played before. So this week I was playing Gigantic, and Ian wrote up a really, really good review in our Steam group if you want to go check that out.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, dude. And I don't want to speak for Ian and Chris, but I, on the other hand, hate that game.
Second.
I don't think that it's... I haven't played a lot of MOBAs, but I just don't think I am a MOBA player. It is just not my thing. I was telling Chris last night, I find myself getting into it with another player and attacking the crap out of them, and then one of my teammates walks up and like flicks him and gets the kill. And I'm just standing there like, what the hell? I just worked my ass off for this, and you get all of the rewards. And I find that most of my playing is like that, and I end up with 1 kill and 24 deaths. at the end of like a round. And it's not a rewarding experience for me.
It's definitely a MOBA, so it does all the things that MOBAs do really well, and it also suffers from all the same ailments that other MOBAs suffer from. But I don't want to talk about it because you can read it in my full review on our Steam page at the Game Brew Steam. Chris, how did I get there?
Oh, man.
Or just go to the Facebook. It's on the Facebook, too.
It's on the Facebook, yeah. So check out the full review there. What I do want to talk about is I want to talk about The Long Dark, single-player survival game where there are no zombies, no evil monsters, nothing. You're just out in the middle of the cold dark in northern Canada, and your goal is to live, and that's it. And it's awesome.
Sounds terrifying. Canada.
It's super atmospheric.
No.
You have to, make sure your meters are all full and figure out where your next source of food and water is coming from. It's really cool. They just got into full release from their long beta, early release stuff, and when they did the full release, they released some story content too. So I think it's worth checking out.
How akin to Don't Starve is this?
Not at all. Don't Starve is frantic survival. This is very contemplative, very...
So it's slower. It's not like 5 minutes in, you haven't found food, so you die.
Yeah, it's atmospheric.
Oh, okay.
It's like relaxing in a very stressful
You're
way.
not constantly running around with your hair on fire. Okay.
Frank.
We already
Frank already went.
No, Frank
It's
already
just
went.
me.
It's Chris
Frank.
time.
It's just me.
It's Chris time.
It's just me.
It's Chris time.
It's cool. You can forget
sorry,
about me. It's
Chris.
fine. It's
Sorry.
fine.
I'm not used to it's too many. Okay.
So this week, I did something that I don't normally do. So if you know anything about me, well, actually, probably not a lot of people know this about me. I'm terrible at basketball. I'm probably the worst basketball player ever in the world, ever.
But a fabulous beard.
I don't know, man.
So I was so bad at basketball that my dad came up to me before the season one year when I was a kid and was like, how about we just play baseball instead during basketball season? That's how bad at basketball I was.
Your dad is an honest man.
Yes, well,
awesome.
he knew that I was better at other things, so that's fine. So I've been playing NBA 2K17 this week.
Yes!
And I've been having a fucking blast with it. And I don't know why. I mean, I think it's because I've been playing mostly just the My Career mode, and I really like the RPG elements of kind of, you have to practice, and you have to play games, and you can make yourself better after almost every game, basically. And I really like there's also a companion app for your phone that you can kind of get a little more upgrade points that way too. So it kind of makes you kind of always thinking about it, kind of like what Dan was talking about. And I've had a really good time with it, which is really surprising for me to say. I didn't expect to have this much fun with it.
Because you're normally not a sports game person, or are you?
I mean, there was a time period when I played the shit out of some Madden but normally no, I'm not. I don't really get into FIFA. I can get into some baseball games, but no, this is not my normal game for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
All right, so that's it for what we've been playing this week.
Silence
We're
there.
going to move on to our first segment, which is comic book heroes that need their own games. So we were thinking about how we wanted to sort of smush our Game Brew podcast together with the Long Lost Hero podcast. Just we're smushing. That's what we're doing
Lots
right
of
now.
smushing.
And we thought it might be cool to pitch some ideas for games, for comic book heroes that need their own game.
Do you hear this, Ubisoft, EA? You all hear this?
Yeah, that's right. Everybody,
Yeah.
all you game developers out there, make sure you contact us because we will need compensation when you take our ideas inevitably.
Copious amounts.
Copious
compensation.
We have the best lawyers, let me tell you. Wonderful lawyers.
We have the
There's
best
some great
lawyers.
Is anyone here a lawyer?
We got my mom. That's all you need.
Yeah, Chris's mom.
Thanks, Mrs. Chris.
We're going to go to Frank.
So I was kind of thinking about this. Obviously we've had a lot of superhero games in the past, and it sort of coincidentally happened that we had this movie recently, AntMan. So I was thinking, okay, a really fun game that is probably way too complicated for anyone to make would be an open world AntMan game in which basically anywhere you go, you can decide whether you want to shrink or to grow, and you can just explore everything. It's probably massive. So I think they probably wouldn't necessarily go down that road. But on the flip side, something that I think maybe they could do is, akin to something like a platformer or something that's a little bit more goal-oriented, in which you have to use your powers to shrink or grow in order either solve a puzzle or to progress through to the next stage. You know, there's endless possibilities with his powers. I think that would be kind of cool. We have, you know, on a certain level, Mario, however you want to, I'm from New York, I say Mario. He shrinks and he grows with mushrooms, but I think, you know, you could do that to a greater extent with Ant-Man, team him up with the Wasp and some other characters, and I think that'd be pretty cool.
That would be cool.
That's pretty interesting. That you could do like almost like, I want to say kind of like the classic like Darksiders or Legend of Zelda, where there's like this larger world that you could go into, but you could like, there's the two portions, or like, Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap.
I was about to say
you ever play that?
No.
I was about to talk about that. Yeah, Minish Cap, you kind of have that same thing where you get the ability to shrink down into a much smaller size, and so you can explore different areas of the map when you're shrunk down than when you're full size.
Right. So like Alice in Wonderland.
Kind of, yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
That's interesting.
I'd dig it. I'd play it. That would be...
Yeah.
Can you dig it?
That would be a chore.
I can dig it.
Let me ask you
can dig
guys,
it.
I haven't played any of the recent Lego Marvel games, but I don't know if that's a character that's in there or not, or, I mean, if they've done that.
I would imagine he is. I don't know off the top of my head, but if I was a betting man, I'd say there's an Ant-Man in there just because it lends itself super well to those like simple Lego mechanics. But it looks like Dan's doing some Googling, so...
Ant-Man's in there. He's classic Ant-Man.
Yeah, he might be DLC, though.
Yeah, and he has ant powers, so...
Cool.
What's funny is that he's not in... I don't see him in either of the Marvel Ultimate Alliance games.
No, I don't think he would be. That was like...
He was too small. That's why you don't see him.
He was there. Just gotta look really closely.
I want to do the Nick Zielinski skin on the Ant-Man game.
Oh, this is a joke I don't get. Who's Nick Zielinski?
Yes, you get this. You get this. Honey, I Shrunk the
Honey, I
Kids.
Shrunk the Kids, the person I look like, if you imagine me. Listeners who don't know what I look like, imagine Rick Moranis, but more attractive, and it's me.
AJ, what do you got, man?
Okay, so my original idea when I saw this was I didn't want to go with any of the other classic heroes, and I was trying to think of one I love from my childhood, and that was absolutely Spawn. And I love Spawn, and I love the movie of Spawn, even though it's bad. I still think it's okay.
I watched that last week.
I think that there would be a great Spawn game. The cool thing about Spawn is, like, there are different worlds, so, like, you can kind of intermingle it between him in Hell and him back on Earth and doing different parts of the story. And I think a cool part of it that could be different than, like, the Arkham games, which I haven't played all the way to completion ever. I apologize, everybody. But, it would be cool to make your own moves in them and be able to kind of do different things with the cape and stuff. And then as I was talking to you guys, I'm like, why isn't there like an awesome, like cooperative Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles game? Like that would be the best.
Oh, like an open world Ninja Turtles game?
Yeah, because there was an arcade game.
Yeah, that was the arcade version, I think.
Yeah, they're all co-op, so.
Yeah, but they're like super old now. Like they don't have like the complexity that we can make into them.
Well, actually, if you remember, the NES version of the Ninja Turtles game was kind of open world because you would pop up from the sewers into your like little Ninja Turtles car and drive around. You guys remember this? And then go to the next location. It was like Neo open world, but it's true. Like they haven't done that in a while.
I had Turtles in Time, but
nice.
So good.
It's my favorite.
That was a great one.
Anyway, but it would be cool to do a Ninja Turtles movie in like the style of like the Ghostbusters video game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
that would be
like make it like a movie. Give them like a story and like something to do.
Gotta make him a story. Give him a movie.
Yeah, go do what you gotta do.
The hands are flying. If you can't see, there's hands flying everywhere.
All right, Dan, I'm super excited for your idea because it's a comic book character that people might not think would have a great video game.
Okay, so
lay it out there.
One, I have to confess something. I watched all of the first season of Riverdale, the CW teen drama, and
Dude, no shame. No shame.
We're not going to bleep this out, Dan.
I know, it's fine. This is a safe place, I hope. It's not safe.
The internet is totally safe, Dan.
But like that show is Archie Comics. And because I'd been watching that, I like kind of had it on my brain whenever we started talking about this. And there's this really cool series of comics under like the Archie horror heading which they came out with, which is called The Afterlife with Archie. Basically, the gist of the story is Jughead, his dog Hot Dog, gets hit by a car, and he goes to visit some witches to bring it back to life. And it does come back, but as a zombie, and it bites him. So Jughead turns into a zombie and then proceeds to infect all of Riverdale with the zombieism disease. So like Archie and Betty and all these characters from Archie Comics, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Josie and the Pussycats, since they're all
Weatherby!
Yeah, they're all in this world, and I was thinking, have you played State of Decay at all?
Yeah.
I'm thinking like kind of State of Decay where it's like it's in the midst of this. So you either play as like you could play as Archie or you could play as just like a kid in this town, and you interact with all of these characters, but it's still like a zombie survival horror kind of game.
State of Decay makes a crazy bastard child with The Sims.
Yeah, kind of. And then you get to like, and you could have like, you could meet Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and there's all these crazy powers that you could have. Josie and the Pussycats are in it too. They have some powers in this universe. I don't want to spoil anything if you're going to read it.
Dan, I think your idea goes brilliantly with our blood red super sweet beer this week. It's like
Super
perfect
sweet.
combination to that kind of idea.
I mean, it's just, I just, that popped into my head, and I was just like, man. And also, if you haven't read Afterlife with Archie, it's totally worth it. It's so good. It's pretty terrifying.
Dan is easily scared. Let's move on to
Right.
Alex.
You're right.
Because, Alex, your idea sounds real. Actually, your idea is, like, I think my favorite of all of them. Sorry, everybody else.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this too. So this idea started because I really enjoy watching the CW's Arrow, and I think that a really cool idea for a game would be League of Assassins.
Ooh.
So, like,
I like this.
the League of Assassins from, like, the Batman.
Ra's al Ghul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So DC Comics, League of Assassins. So in the game, I'm thinking that you would play as Talia,
Which is awesome.
who is the daughter of Ra's al Ghul, who is the leader of the League of Assassins. She's also sometimes the lover and sometimes enemy of Batman, and the mother of Damian Wayne, who is one of the many Robins. But I think what would make this an interesting game would be if it were a Metal Gear style stealth game, and you would get missions from Ra's, but somewhere in the middle you realize that Ra's wants Batman to be his successor and not you, and so your jealousy leaves you with a decision, and you can either choose to continue to be Raz's hitman and leading a life as a member of the League, or you can decide to challenge Raz and kill him. And when you kill Raz in the DC world, you become Ra's al Ghul. And so if Talia was to kill him, she would become the leader of the League of Assassins. Because there's also a lot of DC crossover with her character between Batman and Arrow and many others, there could be a lot of cameos in the game, but Talia would be the main character that you would play as.
Dude, I love this idea. That's
a good
awesome.
idea.
That sounds really good.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Chris,
My idea is not that cool.
pitch it. Pitch it, Chris. You gotta pitch it like it's gold, man.
So I kind of actually can't believe this hasn't been done yet. I was thinking of it would be like an adventure style, maybe like Thief or something like that, or even like Horizon Zero Dawn, but play as the Green Arrow. And you'd have, just like in Horizon Zero Dawn, you'd kind of have different types of arrows that you can shoot, because that was kind of his thing. And also maybe have a little bit of the combat of the Arkham games too. I think that'd be a really cool game.
Yeah, like a stealth game would be cool.
I don't know if it would be the most original game, but I think it would be a solid game for sure.
That strikes me as something that would be a unique hybrid between that game and like the Arkham fighting styles, because of the nature of the character. And
Yeah.
I think that sounds fun as hell.
So get on that, Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
I think there'd be a good story to tell there too. You know, like they're definitely different between Arrow and Batman. So
Oh, for sure.
yeah, I think it would be compelling enough, and like you said, the combat would probably be different enough from the Batman and Arkham games. So that sounds really cool to me too.
All right, my turn.
Oh, is it? No, we're gonna skip you.
Nah.
No, it's my turn.
Okay, that's the next
All right.
topic. Next topic.
So, do we know who Moon Knight is first?
Speak at once.
The
silence
pitter-patter
was
of keyboards tells me. Okay, so I had to look up Moon Knight too. He's a Marvel Universe B-list hero. His most well-known team-up is a Spider-Man, so he sort of lives in that world a little bit. And Moon Knight is crazy, literally. He at some point in his vast history, he separated himself into 3 different personalities. So he has like a street guy, taxi driver personality. He has a millionaire dude personality, and then he's got the person who he actually really truly is. But it's not like Batman where he just kind of goes like, I'm Bruce Wayne, oh, now I'm Batman. He actually has a multiple personality disorder, which to me would be a really cool way to get into different game modes with each of those people, and like a cool storyline that maybe is sort of kind of Memento-y, where they maybe don't all know what the other character is thinking, and so there's story ramifications to that.
That sounds cool as shit.
I like the game modes.
He's essentially like Marvel's response to Batman. He has tons of gadgets and super cool armor, and he's rich.
He looks really cool.
He looks really cool. I didn't know anything about Moon Knight until I was playing, funny story, that Marvel beat 'em up game for phones, where it's like a cheap little fighting game. It's free to play, but it's like super grindy.
Oh, what's that called? Contest of Champions?
Yes, or yeah, something of heroes.
Contest
maybe?
of Heroes? Champions of Heroes?
Something like
Champions of Champions?
Heroes of
Not Galaxy of Heroes.
Breakfast.
That's Star Wars.
of
That's Star Wars.
Breakfast of Champions, yes.
Anyway, so I didn't know about him till that,
Breakfast.
and I just thought he looked super cool, and so I looked up his backstory, and it's actually a pretty cool backstory. So I think he could be a really cool open world sort of game. Will, I'm actually afraid to ask you about what these ideas are, because I don't know who these people are and they scare me.
Well, I have 2. One is very whimsical and fun just because it should be, and that is Arm Fall Off Boy, which is a comic book character, and it's exactly what it sounds like. I think it would make a fun as hell game. Arm Fall Off Boy can pull off his arms and beat people with them. That's what he does, and I think that would just make an incredible just brawler, like an old school Streets of Rage type brawler. And you get different, like the left arm can do certain things. You can upgrade the left arm. The right arm can, and same with your right and left leg. You get different abilities with those. I think that sounds hilarious and just fun as hell.
Sounds like a great VR game.
It sounds like a really shitty Fall Out Boy cover band.
I think it sounds wonderful.
Or like an ARMS DLC character.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
That'd be cool.
And then a serious one that I actually found is Deadman. Deadman first appeared he's a DC Comics character in 1967. I think it was in the 60s. It was a long ass time ago. And he was a circus performer who, if I remember correctly, was murdered, and he somehow survives. Don't ask me how, I don't remember. But he gets all these abilities that he uses to try and track down his killer. And you've got your standard superhero fare of agility, super strength type thing, tracking. But his neat things are teleporting, stealth, and very specifically, possession.
So like Dishonored?
Sort of like Dishonored.
So it would be Dishonored.
That's
No,
exactly
it would not be Dishonored. It would not be Dishonored. What I envision...
guys, have you played Dishonored, though?
Sorry, we'll go.
So Arm Fall Off Boy is... No, so I envision a Splinter Cell type game where, or maybe a top down, I don't know, but something along that stealth genre where to get shit accomplished, you can't actually be the one doing it. You have to find the right people to take possession of and get them to accomplish whatever task you have at hand. And I think that sounds like tons of fun because you have to track down the correct people to control to begin with and then play the game through these other characters.
So like Super Mario Odyssey, where you just possess things.
Sure.
Is that the
I've
new
never
one with
played
the hat?
Odyssey. So
It hasn't come out.
It's
Hasn't come out yet, so
It'd be kind of impressive.
All right, Game Brew listeners, that's it for our first segment. Let us know which comic book heroes you think deserve their own game by sending us an email at thegamebrew@gmail.com or hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TheGameBrew. When we come back, we'll check in with Lindemans' Framboise Lambic, and in our second segment, we'll discuss IPs that have crossed the great divide into gaming. Stick with us. And welcome back to the Game Brew, ladies and gentlemen. This week, we are drinking Lindemans' Framboise Lambic. How's it sitting on the palate with y'all?
I finished the bottle.
Did you have a little bottle or
Did you have the 750?
Yes.
Is it the size of your forearm?
Yes.
Okay, that's the 750.
Damn, dude.
You've got some thick forearms, dude.
Do you work out?
Do you,
Oh, wait, that's
do
not my
you
forearm,
even
I'm
lift,
sorry.
bro?
I'm getting a major sugar rush from this. It's really good, but it reminds me of like a melted Slurpee.
Yeah, it's kind of got that thing going on. I switched over from the Framboise to the Peach.
The peach one?
Peach.
Pish.
Pesh.
Pishy.
And, sorry, you got it? Capiche? You
I think it's
understand?
Pesh.
The peach.
Patchy.
And so this is the peach one, and it's not as good as the Framboise. I like the raspberry one
That's
better.
upsetting because I'm going to be drinking that tomorrow. I did what AJ said and mixed it with another beer that I had. I have some Golden Monkey here.
Oh,
So
nice.
I'm digging that. I like that.
Yeah, I too cut mine with some Oberon, and it is
Ooh, nice. That would be really good with it.
It's good.
What's that called again, AJ?
So in the Hoegaarden and the Framboise, called a Belgian Kiss. I had it with a red stripe. I'm calling it Jamaican Kiss. So yeah, I guess appoint your own locality.
Chris
as
got
The
Chris got a
Philadelphia
monkey
kiss. Yeah.
You got a monkey kiss. Mine's a sun kiss.
Get
Get it?
I like it because the Oberon.
Because Oberon's like the sun. Yeah,
for
I
our
get it.
listeners.
It's funny. It's funny.
What we want to talk about now is a topic we're calling crossing the divide. So many IPs, that is intellectual properties, which means just an idea or a character or a story, have made the cross over from their original medium, so be it a book or a movie or a comic, into games. But only so few of those who have attempted this have done so successfully. And almost everybody who has done this before has had a failure in their past. So there's good Batman games and there's bad Batman games. There's not really any great Spider-Man games and there's really bad Spider-Man games. So I wanted to ask if you, the Game Brew people, and Frank and AJ from Long Lost Heroes, knew of some successes that you wanted to shout out there for games that cross the divide. And then to follow up with that, what makes a good game out of an IP that wasn't a game before? And what makes a game bad when they try to transfer from an IP into a game? So I want to start with Frank because he's got something that I would not have thought about. So Frank, tell me about your Crossing the Divide IP into game and why it's good.
So yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head right there in that some IPs, when they cross, they just end up putting out way too many. So for my example, the Harry Potter games, they had one for every single movie that came out and pretty much every single one was bad. Now, I remember enjoying the Chamber of Secrets, the second one, a lot, and I played it on GameCube. But like looking back in retrospect, I found out that people actually generally liked that game, and of all the movie games, that was one of the most positively received. And I think like a lot of the elements from it came probably from like the Zelda games, like Ocarina of Time, and it had a lot of really neat elements in that way. And then you were able to do different spells and that sort of thing. So that one stuck out, but I think it probably hasn't aged as well because of the graphics. But
was that Ocarina element sort of something you did with the wand, and how did that work exactly?
Well, I think mainly it probably took a lot of the button combinations, just like having a weapon that you would have like as a sword, or something that you would be your primary attack weapon, and then you have some other buttons that you would assign as like your secondary. In this game, it was more of like a different spell that you would assign to that button, and you can kind of swap them out, similar to like Ocarina of Time with your bow and arrows and the like.
I see.
So, but in a different side of it, the Lego Harry Potter games have actually been pretty good, and so I think that's sort of its own entity, and I'm sure we'll probably talk about the Lego games overall, because the Harry Potter ones of those are some of my favorites. But
so that's a good question. I feel like a lot of games that are based really closely on movies, like I imagine the Harry Potter games are. I haven't played them, so you can confirm or deny, but I feel like a lot of those games actually really struggle. So it's interesting that Lego, which takes essentially characters completely out of their element or brings them into a Legoized version of their world, has been so successful with so many different IPs. That's actually a credible achievement now that I think about it.
I think that's a gameplay thing. Am I wrong with that? With what Lego games I've played, it's not for story. It's just fun gameplay, and I have a good time with it because it's just good gameplay.
Yes and no. I've played a couple of the Lego games. I played the Star Wars, some of the Star Wars, and some of the Batman. And definitely the Star Wars one kind of tries to follow along with the stories for sure. They take some artistic ideas and just kind of go with them and follow the broad spectrum of the story and not like to the letter kind of thing. And I think that's what really makes it work.
I love these Lego games. I think they're brain gum, and they're really fun to play because they're simple, and the stories make you feel good, and you want to keep playing. Like that's the ultimate thing about like a game for me anymore. Like I have a really hard time like digging into a first-person shooter or some role-playing game or something where there's no like tangible levels. Like I guess that's like too silly of me, but like I like at the end of the level it pops up, you see your points, you see what happens, you go on to the next thing, move on with your life, and like that allows me to have closure and put the game away. And like these Lego games so perfectly occupy that for all the IPs that they introduce. I think I love the Marvel Superheroes game. I've played it like 2 or 3 times all the way through. It's a really awesome, fun time every time. I'm really digging the complete saga reissue, the 360 that came out. So I've been playing that too. That's awesome. I think it's cool that Lego's been able to do this. I would also love to play like Indiana Jones, Jurassic Park. They've done them all.
And that's one of the incredible things about Lego to me, is that they've been able to do so much. Alex, you wanted to jump in there.
It's also incredible that cross-platform, it's as incredible. So you can play it on your iPhone or your mobile phone, and you can play it on the Xbox or on your computer, and like across all of the platforms, it's just as good.
It's just as fun.
It doesn't lose anything.
What Lego game was for iPhone? I completely missed this.
Most of them.
Yeah, you can get most of them. Yeah, I play Star Wars on my iPhone.
That's awesome. Yeah, I like the Lego games because they offer a really approachable gameplay style. So it's easy puzzles, hack and slash, but it's all in the name of fun, and you feel like you could sit down with anybody and play them. Like I could sit down with the most hardcore gamer I know and have a good time playing Lego games, or I could sit down with, my 4-year-old niece and be like, hey, push these buttons, and we'd still have the same amount of fun. And that's really amazing too.
Yeah, and I think just that couch co-op thing that, we all experienced growing up, in all the games that we've played, it carries through on a game like this. And, I can play it with my wife, who isn't really a big gamer, but, we have endless hours of fun with it. So.
Right. So is the lesson here that any IP can succeed on any platform in the gaming world as long as it's done by Lego?
Yes.
I think that's absolutely a conclusion. They've solved it. They've put the needle through the thread. How do you make it good? You simplify it, you make it Legos, and you tell the stories, and you go from there. That is absolutely the definitive at this point.
Cool. Well, good podcast, everyone.
The good part. All right, chapter. Close it down. Well, I was just going to say, some people, though, they want to interact with their game experience in a much deeper way or with a much deeper story than maybe a Lego is trying to offer. So, Chris, I know you've got a couple of pretty heavy hitters over on your side, wondering if those slightly deeper things, maybe you could talk about that.
So I wanted to talk about Mad Max for sure. The new Mad Max game was fucking great.
I've never even heard that they put a Mad Max game out.
Yeah, so it came out right around the same time as the movie, but it wasn't related to the movie itself. Like the Mad Max character that you're playing is not Tom Hardy. You're playing it's Mad Max.
Mel Gibson?
No, it's just like a generic Mad Max type character. So it doesn't look like any.
Wait, hold on. It's not an actor. It is Mad Max.
Yeah, he is Mad Max.
Okay.
It's kind of like when you play the Arkham games, you're not playing any particular Batman, you're just playing Batman. if that makes sense.
Of course. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's an open world game made by the same people that did Shadow of Mordor. Very similar gameplay, but you get to drive cars around and stuff. It was just very well done. And I think to the point was the fact that it wasn't having to follow the script of the movie. And it was able to make its own story, and that's what made it great.
Oh, I see. So you're saying that something about games that could make them more successful is when they use the world and they use the mythos that surrounds a certain character, but they don't try to mirror the actual stories that are built somewhere else.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of games fall down, is where if they try to tell the story as exactly as it is in the movie, it falls short because it's not a cinematic experience. It's you're active in participating in that world.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, it sets up expectations. If you try to follow the storyline of the other medium, there's already a set of expectations and types of interactions and flow that's there already. That it just you need a unique experience in the new medium for it to stand out as unique. So, I agree.
The other game I wanted to talk about was Metro 2033, which was adapted from a book by a Polish author. It's post-apocalyptic world in the year 2033, and you're in Russia, so you're in the Moscow metro. And the first game does not follow along particularly with the book Metro 2033, but it creates a great story, and it uses the world building super well super well. That's great.
It's a big well.
Bigly successful.
Bigly successful. And does a really great job with that as well. And it made me buy the book because it was such a good game, and I think that says something too.
That's interesting. Alex, you wanted to jump in here.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have kind of mentioned most of this already, but I think one of the important parts that we've all been talking about is that when you take away the actor from that franchise, or you take away a very specific story that you've already seen done, then that allows the player of that game to immerse themselves as that superhero or that character. And it allows them to take on those powers and those abilities and be put in those environments that character is around, instead of you pretending to be whatever actor is Spider-Man at that time, or you are Daniel Radcliffe or
Henry Cavill.
I am Daniel Radcliffe.
You get to create your own story.
No, you're Daniel Radcliffe.
No, I'm Daniel Radcliffe.
So you're saying that instead of being Channing Tatum and being able to break dance like a badass, that I'm going to have a better experience pretending to be a guy who's like Channing Tatum, but break dances just as much of a badass.
Did you just make a Magic Mike reference, Will?
I don't know. I've never seen that. But there's another movie where Channing Tatum dances, and
it was Step Up. It's
Step Up. Yeah, Step Up.
But come on, the Magic Mike game.
Don't mess with I know my Tatum.
Yeah. Then there's things where it's like, I know, Frank. Not Frank. Who am I talking about?
I don't know.
No. I'm talking to Alex, but I'm also referencing Frank because in the script you talked about GoldenEye, and like whenever you play GoldenEye though, like you get to be James Bond, and that is a very specific character, and it's like, I love being James Bond, you know?
Specifically,
but you weren't necessarily limited to a particular specific James Bond experience that you've already seen in movies. You aren't replicating.
I mean, GoldenEye, the single player campaign was basically GoldenEye, like the big set pieces from GoldenEye the movie.
Yeah, but they took some liberties.
I think the difference there is that GoldenEye was kind of revolutionary. Mm-hmm. Like that was an experience that gamers had never had before. And so even though it did follow GoldenEye to a point, there was an attribute to it that no one had experienced before.
What was that attribute?
The gameplay.
Yeah, the gameplay and I can't name another first-person shooter that was like GoldenEye at that time.
I mean, Quake was
Quake and Doom. I was about to say.
Yeah, Quake and Doom were about the same time, but
they were earlier.
GoldenEye, right? But I do think I do think GoldenEye brought the first-person shooter in a real way to the masses because that was on a Nintendo console.
Yes.
You didn't have to have a PC with a graphics card. Probably at that point for Quake, it was probably in the era where you didn't necessarily need a graphics card for all games, and I think Quake you did. Somebody might correct me on this later, but certainly PC gaming at the time was more niche than just having an N64 and popping in a cartridge and go crazy.
Yeah, and it's interesting because that game actually came out a few years after the movie, so it wasn't like some of these other games we're talking about were like a year after or a couple months after the release. GoldenEye had a little bit of time later, and it still became such a big phenomenon at the time.
Where was the Tomorrow Never Dies game?
I did play it.
Yeah.
It was not good.
It was not that great.
They've made a For Russia with Love game.
Right.
Yeah.
I think
Like 40 years later.
I can play on my Xbox?
I don't know if you can play it on your Xbox, but you can definitely... Hold on.
Chris's screen just lit up. He's researching.
I think
being Hacker Man.
I think what's really
Hacker
telling
Man.
about the GoldenEye experience is that GoldenEye spawned sequels that were based on its gameplay and not based on its story. So you got Perfect Dark, and what was Perfect Dark's sequel?
Perfect Dark
Zero.
Perfect Dark
There you
Zero,
go.
not as good.
Right, but still pretty fucking good in terms of first-person shooters at the time. So
Yeah.
I think that's an example of the gameplay being really strong and sort of overtaking even what the intellectual property may have been. Alex, you talked in the notes about the Simpsons Hit and Run.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Which is
That
such
game
a
was
blast
so
from the past.
good.
It was so much fun. So
fucking love
talk,
that game.
talk, because
All
that
right,
game was great.
So as I was exercising my brain muscles, thinking of IPs that were interesting transitions, Simpsons definitely stood out to me. I actually have the Simpsons game, Xbox 360 game, sitting over to the right of me.
Alex, is that the one that's based off of Crazy Taxi?
Yes.
But way
yeah,
better.
tell us about the gameplay.
Yeah, aren't you? You're Homer, and you could be a bunch of different characters, but you drive around Springfield picking up people and taking them places, and you have
but
time
also
limits
finding
and
secrets and stuff.
yeah.
There were a ton of references to the show, and all the
Yeah.
voice actors were the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's one where if you look at the essence of what makes Simpsons incredible, the writing is incredible, the comedy is great, and the voice acting is great. And they had all of those elements were still in the game. And I found them so entertaining, and I had so many hours of enjoyable gameplay with those games.
Yeah, and it seems like maybe this could be a stretch, like something that the Ubisoft and the South Park games are starting to do, because that's similar model. You've got the characters, the voice acting, and it looks just like the show.
And
Obviously the gameplay in that is really great as well. So totally different game, but I think there is something to be said of taking a cartoon that you can recognize, and it doesn't get lost in translation when you change it into a video game.
If you think of Springfield, like Springfield is already this big, large, massive world that already exists. And so expanding on that and putting it in the shape of a video game is not a stretch.
That's what that's the exact same thing as I was going to say, is that South Park and The Simpsons both have this world and this mythos that surrounds its central characters. And so designing all of that out, you don't have to come up with anything new, because you can just play off all the plot points that you already have, which keeps the IP strong. So I think that's interesting.
And I'm actually remembering this too. There was another game before it called Simpsons Road Rage.
Yes.
Which was
Maybe
just...
that's what I was thinking about. And
That one was straight up Crazy Taxi. Simpsons Hit and Run was more of like Grand Theft Auto.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think I played Hit and Run more.
I played both of them, but they were awesome.
Will, you wanted to talk about E.T.?
Yeah,
Why?
Well, there's a reason. And Alex has already alluded to this, and he stated it very well. There's a difference between, for a good and bad experience, there's a difference between just attaching the name of an IP to a game and expecting it to do well versus applying the appropriate idiosyncrasies to the new medium, so to the game, that make it familiar and accessible, but still leave room for a new gameplay or storytelling experience. And two really piss poor examples of that are E.T. on Atari, which, in case anyone is not familiar with this, the game was so bad that they took up to 20, it was in the teens, of tractor and trailer dump truck size things to a landfill in Texas and buried the damn games. I'm not joking. The games were so bad. This was 1982, 83.
I think that actually bankrupted Atari as well.
It would not surprise me. They threw tons of money into this and expected it to do well because the movie did well, but it wasn't a good gaming experience, and even back then, people weren't going to buy it just because it had the name E.T. attached to it. Another shitty example of that is Shaq Fu. Do you guys remember Shaq Fu, which I think was a Sega game?
Of course I remember Shaq Fu.
So Shaq Fu, correct me if I'm wrong here, but Shaq Fu was a kind of Streets of Rage-ish. It was a brawler game, but you were Shaq, which has nothing to do with Shaq. When has Shaq ever smacked the shit out of somebody on the court? And, he's not Dennis Rodman. He doesn't, a Dennis Rodman Fu game would have been totally appropriate, but Shaq Fu was not, and it was a terrible game. It did not relate. It was not fun. It was too disconnected.
To our gamer listeners, Shaq is Shaquille O'Neal, a basketball player.
In case any of you are youngsters.
And Dennis Rodman is also a basketball player. Sorry, well, continue.
But games that do this really, really well for me, actually a company, I think, that takes those idiosyncrasies and makes it accessible but creates a totally new story is Telltale. They did that with the Walking Dead series so damn
Did they do that with the Walking Dead series?
Oh my God. They took the title and the familiar elements from the show, zombies, Exhibit A, death, Exhibit B, but it was a brand new storytelling and interactive experience. It was so much fun.
I just wanted to say that, I think the interesting thing about the Walking Dead comics and the interesting thing about the Walking Dead video games is that it's essentially taking regular people and putting them in a high pressure situation and just seeing what's going to happen, right?
Yeah, it puts you in the role of decision maker in a familiar-ish environment.
Right, and in a super high-stakes, stressful situation. And the games did the exact same thing, and they made you care, and that was brilliant.
Absolutely.
And those games are really accessible, too. You can play them on iPhone, and you can get them obviously on Xbox and PlayStation as well, but, they're not necessarily a game that you have to be a really hardcore gamer to enjoy. If you enjoy The Walking Dead, the show, you can pick that up and get a different experience.
That's a good point. They're really ubiquitous. They're on everything.
So here's the thing. I think that in our conversation, we've talked about how we appreciate games that are connected to a different IP's universe and let their own story happen within them. And we've talked about games that we like that also just keep characters from the story and put them in their own thing, right? So my question is, how do you know the difference between an IP that needs to keep the story with the game and an IP that just needs to have a sprinkling and fun gameplay?
I don't know if it's as much about the IP, if it's more about the gameplay. Because the Lego games succeed because, they take strong IPs, but they also have very good, solid gameplay with it.
All of the Lego games, it's the same gameplay.
Right.
It's the exact same gameplay. It's just reskinned.
Right. So I've waxed enough poetic on Legos. But to your point earlier, I think the trick is also gameplay is crucial. Absolutely, I don't mean to undercut that at all. But showing the fans something new, telling a new story, showing somebody that you want to see, you want to experience. Like, you've played Ninja Turtles. Have you played Time Traveling Ninja Turtles?
Nope.
No. Oh my God.
The Star Wars pod racing game.
Oh man, that game was fucking
That was
good.
great.
That's a great game. So, I think I wrote this down. So I think IPs that are going to generate a great game have to have expansive world building. You got to be able to have a big sandbox to play around with. You need a rogues gallery, side characters, vehicles, tech, whatever. But I don't think you should be married to a storyline. I think you have to show the fans something that they've never seen before. Just like how the Ghostbusters game isn't a retelling of the older movies. If they were going to do Ghostbusters 3, this was probably what they were going to do. Like, it's the kind of retooling and mashing and remixing that makes things truly great, not just the re-utterance or this supposition that it's just going to follow the way it's supposed to go in your mind, perfect 3-act story. everything can be moved around and switched up.
I agree with that. I do. I think there is something to be said. Did anyone ever play the Lord of the Rings games that were kind of like...
I did,
kind of like Return of the King, The Two Towers.
They were the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was the movie. Now, arguably, you played as Legolas or Gimli.
Gandalf.
Or Gandalf. No, wait, no, you didn't play as Gandalf.
In Return of the Ring, you definitely did.
Oh, yeah, no, you did. You're right. I'm sorry. But when you play as it was the story. Like, it was straightforward. But those are still, like, those were some of my favorite games, aside from The Bouncer, if you've listened to... the previous podcast, to play with my buddies like all night when I was in high school and middle school was just like we would just play Lord of the Rings all the time.
Right. I remember picking up one of those Lord of the Rings games in the $5 bin like a year after it came out and just messing around with it for a night. But I don't remember them being incredible games, and I think it's because it's just rehashing the events of the movies. I think another interesting thing to bring up here is for me anyway, the elephant in the room, which is Spider-Man. There hasn't been a great Spider-Man game.
Hold. There's a new one coming out that's supposed to be real good.
Well, right, and
Spider-Man
2 was pretty good, and Shattered Dimensions
2,
was okay, right? Like, there have been half-decent Spider-Man games, but Spider-Man is a character who should have had a series of smash-hit, incredible 10 out of 10 video games, because he's got everything you need. He's super fun to listen to talk, he's got an attitude, he's got a killer rogues gallery, pun intended. He's got girlfriends. He's got like cool ass powers, and yet somehow we haven't had a good Spider-Man video game yet. And I want to know why. Like, what is so hard about Spider-Man?
I know the same reason we haven't had a good Iron Man game. Really, an Iron Man game ever. Let's put that back in the last section we just had.
That's because, okay, first of all, everyone knows all the Spider-Man arcs, even in regards to the classic movies or, the basic storylines. People are familiar. So I think that it's kind of like, do they want to just go and rip off the old 90s cartoon and make those into games? No, they don't want to do that. Make a Miles Morales game. Make a Spider-Man
Miles
2000
Morales
game. Like, show us like something different.
Well, they did make a Miles Morales game. Now that I think
they made the one that was like through
but
dimensions.
It was bad.
Yeah.
No, Shattered Dimensions wasn't Miles Morales. It was Ultimate. There was an Ultimate Spider-Man game. But anyway,
they made an Ultimate Spider-Man game? Okay.
They did, and it wasn't good.
Okay. That must have been when I was like, just not paying attention.
I was looking the other way and they made a bad Spider-Man game. Dang it.
Damn it.
Happens to the best of us.
I don't know. I would love a good Spider-Man game. I think Spider-Man 2 is pretty great. We all fawn over it because of the web slinging and just the open gameplay. And that was the first one I remember that was the really successful iteration of that, where it was like really being able to go around New York City, and it held up with the New York City that Frank and I know from growing up, that it looks the same from the same neighborhoods. And it was awesome. So I dug it. What's the new Spider-Man game?
It's Marvel's Spider-Man. And just, sorry, to clarify, the Ultimate Spider-Man game was Ultimate Spider-Man, but it did not feature Miles Morales. It featured Peter Parker, which doesn't make any sense to me, but I need to clarify that.
Whenever Ultimate Spider-Man initially was Peter Parker, Miles Morales came in much later.
Yeah. Oh, I thought
Ultimate
Miles
Spider-Man
was the Ultimate
comics
Spider-Man.
that was such a good retelling. That was so good. I identify with AJ a lot. I'm a big story person with my games, but I think that the bigger issue with the Spider-Man games is figuring out a unique and life-changing combat system. I think that if the Arkham games had been Spider-Man games with that combat system, we'd be sitting around referencing the Spider-Man combat system games as opposed to the Batman combat system games. And I think that would have made Spider-Man or any superhero stand out as a huge, awesome, fun game. Because when I think about those games, the stories are good, but it's the combat system that's so much fun. So I think that's going to be what it takes for any superhero. His story's good, but a superhero needs a kick-ass, unique combat system.
Speaking of that, the newest Spider-Man is going to be a PS4 exclusive. It's going to just be called Spider-Man, but it's made by Insomniac, who did the Spyro series, the Ratchet and Clank series, and also did Sunset Overdrive, which I think is the most relevant to this. I never played it, but it's great. From what I saw, it looks like it has a lot of those kind of fast-paced elements that you would want to see when you're web-slinging a Spider-Man.
Yeah, kind of. It's super
see.
fun. Like they did a real good job at making a fun like game with that, so they'll do good on this.
I'll believe it when I see it. I'm not holding my breath yet. And that is Marvel's Spider-Man, and it is a PS4 exclusive. Yes.
Guess I'm getting one.
Will's getting
Are you taking the
everything,
plunge?
correct?
I'm getting everything, man.
You get it, Will.
You get a PS4, and you get a PS4.
You get a PS4.
Oh wait, you're
You
getting them for me.
PS4.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
That's so
Oh
nice.
man, Will's
That's
like
what
the
we do
Oprah
in
of this
Game Brew.
show.
Yeah, it's like Oprah.
If you send us Oprah quotes, you may get a free game. Email Oprah quotes to thegamebrew@gmail.com or post them on the Facebook, and you might get a free game from Oprah Will.
Probably for
Best
Chris,
Oprah
actually.
meme
That's
wins.
awesome.
Yo, I may start a second backup podcast trying to find like failed people who just appeared on the Oprah Winfrey show.
Yeah,
That would be fucking
that's a
brilliant.
good idea.
You can just call it the AJ Sherman show.
And you could theme it around whatever they gave out for that show.
Oh my god, that's funny to think.
All right, well, that's it for our podcast this week. If you have a favorite IP that made the crossover into games, shout it out to us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at TheGameBrew. Or you can always send us an email at thegamebrew@gmail.com. Thanks so much for joining this week. And I want to say a special thank you to Frank and AJ of the Long Lost Heroes podcast. Go check out their podcast. They're amazing. They have tons of cool stuff up out there. It was such a pleasure to have you guys this week.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having
Thanks
us
for
on.
coming, man.
Hooray! Thank you.
So be sure to check them out on the social medias as well at LLH Podcast, or you can find them at longlostheroes.net, or subscribe to their podcast on iTunes.
Whee!
Is that it? Are we done? Did I do it all? Is that all the things? So good job, everybody.